have your reference PDFs with you that I sent in the email that went to you yesterday. And I'd love to know which are the drawings, which are the scenes that you find most interesting, most challenging, the thing that you would want to draw, but you would have difficulty thinking about how to begin, how to go through it, how to end it. So please feel free to say things in the chat, and we will be ready to begin in just a few minutes. I'm hoping at least maybe 20, 30 more people to join us. I'm super excited about today's workshop because this workshop is sort of been prompted by participants. In the last workshop I did, was a 3-hour session in which we were talking about a lot of different things around starting and maintaining a sketchbook habit. But this workshop is sort of an offshoot from it because I taught something very specific in that workshop about how to break down complex scenes. And several participants later asked me to do a workshop specifically about that lesson from it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The larger lesson is still the same. The larger goal is still the same, which is that I want to help you to build a sketchbook habit. I want to show you how it can be not only fun, but also easy and quick to do, how it can satisfy your curiosity, and how you can use it as a way to sort of figure out what are the things that are interesting to you, to understand your curiosity better, and to express it regularly as your life allows you to express it regularly through a visual medium. So we'll begin with, oh, hi, Linda from Los Gatos, California. And Elaine is joining from South Surrey. All right, the rear view mirror scene. And Linda says the city scene, the fourth photo with the city. Is that the same one? Oh, the fourth photo with the city is the one downtown. Yeah, that's a really challenging one and it's super interesting. So I'd love to show you that. Anna is joining from Bangalore, originally from Australia. Hi, Anna. And the picture of the girl in the ferry. The ferry is not in Seattle. The ferry is the sea bus of Vancouver. We use it to go from downtown to North Van. All of the pictures in today's workshop have been taken by me. This is another little tip for you. If you want to draw from reference images, as a lot of people prefer to do because it gives them a bit of breathing space to work at their desk at their ease, I do highly recommend that you work out of pictures that you have taken from your own phone by your own hand. This is very important because the pictures of other people are their points of view, and it speaks to their interests, literally their perspective. And the pictures you take yourself, the ones that are pleasing to you, are the ones that speak to your compositional skills, your sense of perspective, and your sense of how you like objects to look and what you should focus on. So taking photos can be very educational to you because it will help you to build and refine your own composition, and drawing from them therefore builds upon those compositions. Hi, Nancy from Maine. Picture of Burrard Street. Absolutely, yes. It is one of the most challenging ones in this PDF, so we'll make sure we do that. Maybe I can do that in my demo right now. Sarah is from San Francisco, and she would like to draw the one with the person on the bicycle. Yes, that's a really fun one too. Hero is joining from Surrey in the UK, and also the fourth picture. Absolutely, excellent. So this is good stuff, guys. Please keep your questions coming in the chat. I'd love to be able to answer them. How we'll begin is, let me tell you, I think most of you already know me, but I would like to begin with showing you my sketchbook and talking just a little bit about what I do and how I draw. To put this workshop into context, what is the goal of this workshop? Where should you be at the end of this workshop, and which directions you can go from there? So most of the time, if you've ever seen me drawing outdoors, if you've seen my art, I'm drawing with this pen. I like to draw with a minimalist toolkit. I don't like to carry too many things. So this pen and this sketchbook, or a sketchbook of this size, which fits in the palm of my hand, is very convenient to me because I can stand anywhere and draw. It's a hardback sketchbook, so it doesn't buckle. I can stand in a street corner. I can rest my back against a building or a pole somewhere, and I can easily stay there for half an hour or 45 minutes, and I can make drawings, which is how I made this one, for example, in the cold. And this also lets me finish sketches quickly. So it's a small page. which means I don't feel very intimidated about starting a drawing. I can think that a sketch can take me 5 minutes or 10 minutes if I have that much time. This one took me around 20-25 minutes. It was a very cold morning. And so my fingers were getting numb and I had to really think about how much I wanted to draw. Initially, I wanted to draw both pages and spread it out. But at this point, I gave up. I knew that I couldn't go on very long. Even my Posca marker, you can see, was drying from how cold it was. So small sketchbooks are really fun to me. They make drawing easy to do, easy to begin. They are not intimidating, and I highly recommend them to you as well. This one is from a company known as the Handbook Journal Company from Speedball Art Products. So you can find this at most art stores. I really like their sketchbooks. They even have larger ones, but this size is super pleasing to me. The paper quality is really good for all kinds of stuff. And most of my drawings are with this fountain pen, all these kind of ink drawings, which help me to draw quickly. And I love how ink feels on the page. So this workshop today is called Layers, Layers, Layers. The idea is that I want to show you how to look at a very complicated scene, such as staying across the street and looking at a bus stop, the entrance of a subway station, all these lampposts and buildings and trees and sky, and thinking about how you can break down such a complicated scene into something achievable while thinking also about what is it that you want to draw? What is it that is your focus? So my drawing, the focus is usually human activity. I love watching what people do in different places. And in this sketch also, I was most enamored by just the number of people at the light waiting to cross, the number of people at the bus stop. And I wanted to show this hustle and bustle of human activity in this urban setting. So the urban setting was relevant to my sketch, but it was not the point of my sketch. So I have given it proportionate amount of priority and attention, which is exactly what I'm going to talk about how to do in this workshop. Another drawing that would be a good illustration of today's workshop is this drawing at Capilano Bridge, which is a famous tourist destination in Vancouver. So this is a long suspension bridge, and I wanted to draw it, but there are lots and lots of trees around here, and I didn't want to draw all of them. So I used the foliage here as a sort of framing device, a negative space that I wouldn't draw by itself, but I would draw the edges off in order to mark the space for my sketch. Often in my drawings, I take these kind of liberties because often in my drawings, I'm looking for these kinds of shortcuts, things that help me focus on the thing that I want to draw. Again, human activity in Chinatown, and help me to not spend waste too much time on things that are not pleasing to me, things that are not part of my message, things that are not necessary in my drawing itself. So I love to draw in the park, but trees are quite difficult to draw when you draw with lines and you're not drawing with brushes. So I look for shortcuts on how to draw trees. We will kind of sort of go into that as well in this workshop. Again, foliage and trees as a negative framing device through which I look at my scene. A lot of my quick sketches are also things like this. I love to watch what people do in cafes, but I'm very focused on what is it that I want to say? What is it that I want to talk about? So the theme of this drawing is how cafes let us insulate ourselves from the outdoor world, especially when it's cold outside. But we can still, because of the glass fronts, see what is outside. So we're not visually disconnected from the world. We're not we are insulated thermally and from the effects of weather, rain. We have Wi-Fi, we have coffee, but we are still visually connected to the outside world. So I wanted to share how there is a disconnect, and I show that by changing the ink color. But there is still a connection in that you can see outside, which is why I wanted to draw the outside as well. Cafes are interesting to me because of how you find at different tables people of different, different backgrounds, different kinds of people talking to each other, and all kinds of business going on. So I wanted to show this diversity of activity, but I quickly lose interest when I have to draw furniture. I quickly lose interest when I have to draw parts of bodies that I don't want to draw. And in my sketchbooks, I allow myself to drift away when I lose interest. This is a very important part of today's workshop, how to allow yourself to not spend time drawing the things you don't want to, because really, I can tell you, it's not necessary to draw things that you don't want to draw. no legs, no feet, nothing on the walls because I didn't care to draw it. Let me show you some more sketches to demonstrate this point. A lot of these are just tiny people drawings. Something like this, just like the previous drawing I showed you. Something like this, in which I wanted to show these people paying for parking at the meter, but I didn't want to draw all the trees around. I just wanted to share how far I could see in the distance from beyond them. And I loved this juxtaposition of people in the foreground and mountains and clouds in the background. And using different inks allowed me to share the difference, to show the contrast between these two things, the subject and everything else, but while still giving it line space. This is also a nice illustration of what we want to do today with layers. So I have a foreground layer here where my action is. I wanted to show how people use the park. And then I have a background layer in which is still crucial to draw because it cannot not be there. But I can separate it from my subject layer by changing the ink. I can separate it from my subject layer by giving it less attention and less details as compared to this layer. So we're going to think about layers a lot in today's sketch. Here's one more before I get to my demo and stop talking already. This is a nice illustration, the park right outside my house. Far away, you see clouds, you see mountains far in the background. In the foreground, really, you have this thick bush and this flag, these people. And in the middle ground, you have the conservatory and you have more people watching the skyline and the mountains in the distance. So I have three layers in this drawing. I have a foreground layer of these three people, this flagpole, this bush here, this bush here. I have a middle ground with the conservatory and the people behind here and the person clicking a picture. And then I have a far background with North Vancouver. You can see these buildings here, you can see these mountains, and you can see the clouds. Maintaining these three different layers was useful because then I could think about which layer I cared about the most, which layers were helping me to really ground this drawing in a sense, establish a sense of place and time, and which layer was helping me add information that was maybe just part of explaining what's going on. So that's something we're going to talk about now. Let me quickly flip through this in case I find a sketch that is seriously relevant to today's workshop. A lot of these are now baby drawings since I recently became a father. I think maybe let's talk about sure, this one. This one is a nice one because we were at the park in Burnaby and I was observing other people as well as the waterfowl. And it's interesting to see what people do in parks because different kinds of people come for different purposes. Some people have conversations. There are photographers as well. And so this is my foreground where I was watching the human activity and the waterfowl activity. And then I have a middle ground slash background, just two layers in which I can see the rest of the park. And behind it is nothing else. But I have a clear distinction of detailing and I have a clear distinction of also something I like to do with my fountain pen. If you reverse the nib, you use this side of the nib and then you use this reverse side of the nib, you get a thinner line like so. And this thinner line helps me to, in a sense, push things further back. The thinner the line, the further back something is pushed. The thicker the line, the more pronounced it is, the closer it comes to the page, the closer it comes to what you're seeing. So foreground and background established through line width. All right, so let me do a quick demo for you. And we can come back and look at these drawings again. We can look at another sketchbook after this. If you have questions about any of these drawings or what I'm doing in my demo, please feel free to ask. A lot of the requests are about page number 4. So drawing number 4, which is the scene in downtown Vancouver, Burrard Street. You have lampposts, you have skyscrapers, you have lots of people below. And I want to demo that drawing for you now and explain how that works for me, how I draw it. And the ideas that I'm going to share with you around this are also going to be part of the first exercise we do. So today's workshop, let's begin with the heading, is about layers and layers and more layers, specifically 3 layers. Today's workshop is about having 3 layers in your scene. And the first half of this workshop is about how to pick an object of interest. An object that you see in your scene that makes you want to draw. If not an object, maybe a point of interest. If not a point of interest, maybe some kind of subject that you can find that looks like something is going on, something I want to look at, something I want to observe. The first thing when you walk around with a sketchbook that an artist must do, beyond your artistic skill, beyond what tools you use, is to keep your eyes open. Seeing is half of all drawing, and what you see, what you notice, is a function of your curiosity. So your first responsibility is to tap into your curiosity and think about, what is it that I like about a certain scene? What is it that catches my interest? Be in the frame of mind where you do let things catch your interest. Even if you can't quite explicitly explain why this scene looks interesting to you, you should be able to narrow down to what is it that is interesting. Sometimes the process of drawing is what explains to us why this is interesting to us. So if you have a page like this, or if you have a scene in front of you like this, and you find something interesting over here, and you decide to put it over here on your page, I want you to think about a spiral. As you spiral away from your point of interest, quite naturally, you lose interest, you care less. As you spiral away, therefore, there should be a directly proportional relationship between interest and attention, or let's call it how many lines you draw. So as you spiral away from your point of interest, the less attention you give to the things you see, the less you care about them, and therefore the less lines you give them, the less details you give them, the less time you spend over there. This is something you have to allow yourself to do. Think of it as a vignette. A point of interest, a point of focus, and then as you go away, things start to blur. This is how we see, this is how our eyesight works. Only cameras record everything in equal concentration, everything in equal focus across the length of a scene. Human eye always focuses on something and then blurs away the things around it. So I want you to access this very human way of seeing things and shed these obligations that we feel about how we should draw, which is really just how a camera looks at the world. So with this idea now, a lot of talk, let's get into the fourth drawing. I want to draw this for you. I'm going to give myself a 10-minute timer. Okay, I'm going to give myself a 10-minute timer. You are also welcome to draw along with me. Watch how I go across this page. What is it that I draw and what is it that I draw after that? And follow me as I do it. All right, so drawing number 4. So what I find interesting about this scene is how these two lampposts, one on my side of the street and one across the street, how they sort of look at each other, and then all the activity that's happening underneath it. I love to look at lampposts, guys. So this is very interesting to me for that reason. So this is where my drawing begins. Drawing with ink, one more thing that is really useful to take care of is that you should draw something, because you can never erase your lines. You should draw something that helps you draw other things. What is it that you can draw on the page that will give you information about the other things that will go on that page? So drawing this big lamppost here now, first of all, before anything, before the buildings, before the people, even though people are interesting to me, what this does is it acts almost like a scale. It lets me have a reference for how big these buildings need to be, how small these people need to be, where things need to begin and where things need to end. I'll be able to demonstrate that as we get into further of this sketch. So lots and lots of stuff here, more lights, more things for pedestrians to look at, green, red light, green light. And then this side of the street where everything is, I like this big green I think something to do with power. I'm not sure what the function of this box is. Maybe someone can tell us. But at the street. So I have this lamppost, and now I have a lamppost across the street somewhere here. But before I get into that, I think now about what are the other things that this object helps me to draw. This object helps me to draw this car over here. And seeing this car, I can see how big it is compared to how big is it in my picture and how big therefore it needs to be over here. But I don't really care about cars. So I don't really give them a lot of attention. I don't really care to tell you which car it is. So I'm not going to draw this with that kind of attention that you can tell which model it is and which company it belongs to. I don't really, that's not really the stuff that gives me joy. So I don't bother with it too much. I don't stress over it too much. What is interesting to me are people across the street. And I think about them with reference to this structure. How big do they look, the people crossing the street right now? And I draw them with that in mind. A lot of the people I draw, especially if they're far away, I draw them in one single line like this. Drawing with one single line helps me to see them as the shapes that they are, and I don't get lost in the body details. Meanwhile, let me also allow you to unmute yourself. So in case any of you have questions, I'm sorry I forgot to ask. And now that I'm seeing, oh, sorry, Kate, I didn't see your message. Thank you, Diana, for sharing the PDF, Catherine for sharing the PDF. Let me also share it in case that doesn't work. Let me share it now from my end as well. Here it is. Please feel free to download. This is page 4. So people, now these people give me a clue as to where the curb is on the other side of the street, and that gives me a clue about the other lamppost. And looking at the lamppost, I have a clue about how tall it needs to be in comparison to this one. So you'll see there are small proportionality mistakes here, mistakes, quote unquote. Things are not spaced the way they are in this image. That's not important. What's important is that this drawing be focused on the things that I want to draw and be able to share that, just as your drawings be able to focus on the things you want to show and the things that you want to bring attention to. This lamppost, this information board is on my side of the street, but it's a very useful divider of the page. Like, it sets up action inside this little box over here. Remember, this was my point of interest, and now I'm spiraling away. And as I go further away, I care less. I really don't want to be drawing all of these things because there's a lot of stuff here. And this is supposed to be a quick sketch. This is supposed to be something I can draw while my friends are at a store somewhere, or they are spending their time. My wife is doing something, and I have a few minutes to myself. I can't necessarily take up too much time. I can't take up other people's time. Not everybody has patience with street artists who get inspired by random moments in street corners. So quick, 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 and lots of quick decisions, lots of shortcuts. So losing interest, going further away, not bothering about details, and coming back to this area where I was interested about things. As I go to the background layer, I give it the reverse side of my nib so I get a thinner line. And also, in order to draw it quickly, here's something that I suggest you do. Draw lots of big shapes with long lines. How that works is you have to start ignoring what object you're drawing. You have to focus instead on just the object as the shape it appears before you. Look only at the shape and stop looking at the object as you recognize it. Here's the entrance to the parking garage and another tree. So in a way, you have to dissociate from this thing that you recognize as this thing that you know from your world. And you have to start only seeing the lines as they appear before you. What is this line look like? Where can I take this line from here? Is there another line going up? Oh, there is another tree here. So one line for this. For the buildings in my art, I don't really care about buildings. I think buildings are important to cities, but that's not where my interest lies. So they do need to be part of the sketch, but I don't care to bring attention to them. So I draw them very quickly. I draw them again as single lines, something like this. Oh, there are interesting windows here, so I will give you a clue about them, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time drawing them in detail because, again, I don't want to bring attention to this thing. I really want to think about the thing that I wanted to draw. So, caring less, giving quick, fewer lines, and moving on so that I can bring attention back to what I care about. Buildings really far away. I care very little about these buildings and the details of them. So quick single lines to, oh, let me see if you can, yeah, you can see it clearly. So quick single lines to wrap it up in a sense. I really like it when I can finish things off and I can connect different lines to each other, gives the drawing a sense of neatness. And come back to the things I care about. So I found this foreground very interesting. If I was drawing here in person and not from a photo, maybe by this point someone else would be standing here, and then I would add them to the scene as well. Maybe they have a sweatshirt and they're just waiting for somebody. They can cross the street, but they're waiting for someone, and this person is right behind them and coming up to say hi. So where is it that I care about things and where should I put my attention? That's where I'm going to put details. That's where I want you to look. And that's the thing that I will spend my time drawing out of my 10 minutes that I have to sketch this scene. Something, something, something. Mhm. Is this a bike stand? Maybe it is a bike stand. And a bicycle over here to the bike stand. Okay, half a minute to go. I think about what I want to say, what more I want to show, and maybe a line of perspective will help to set this scene. Maybe a suggestion of maybe some shadows. What else can I do? What else can I add? It might be it might not be bad to add some clouds. So usually when I draw outdoors, clouds are moving in all kinds of different interesting ways. So you never capture a cloud at a moment in time, but you capture a movement of clouds, just like you capture a movement of people. Oh, time's up. So this would be my drawing. Um, this is how I would draw something in which I had a lot of things to distract me, but those are the things that I might not necessarily want to draw. In my case, buildings are important parts of the scene in the sense that without them, you don't know that you are in a downtown of a city. But that's not what I really care to show you. What I want to talk about, where I bring my attention, because that's where my details are, is human activity. People standing under a traffic light, people crossing the street, a busy street. So there are cars, but again, I don't really want to show you cars and I don't really want to get into how to draw cars. So I do them with a single quick line, just a border of the car itself, just the border, just the border, just like I did with this building, just the border, just like I did with these trees, just a single line to show you something like this that, hey, this is this kind of tree over here. It sort of kind of looks like this, but that's enough because I just want to tell you there are trees across the street. What I want you to see is this kind of human action. What I want you to see is this kind of human action. And what I want you to focus on is the street level, not the things going on here. If I was into drawing buildings, if I was an architect, for example, I might have started this drawing with these buildings. And then I might have come to these lampposts and these traffic lights. And maybe then I would have, maybe as a last thought, added a couple of people just to give it scale. But my interest begins with the people, and then it spirals out. As I go away, I care less, I care less, I care less, I care less, and here I care the most. So here is where the action is. Here is where I came back to do more thick lines, more fine hatching lines. Here is where I would also go back with a thicker pen, and I would add some thick lines just to cover it, because like I said, if you add thick lines to something, it becomes more prominent. Also, it gets pushed to the foreground. So I do want to establish that this is my foreground. If there are any questions about what I showed, and if you are in any fog of doubt, please share it in the comments. You're also free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have that. What I would like you to do is, let's take the next 15 minutes, let's take the next 20 minutes and look at these different reference images, pick something that is interesting to you, and I want you to draw it in this manner. I want you to think about what is your point of interest, what is it that catches your eye, and then I don't want you to think too much. I just want you to start from right there, from what catches your eye, and then I want you to imagine this spiral. As you move away from what caught your eye, I want you to let yourself lose the line, lose the attention, lose the time that you would have otherwise spent on it. Give it less lines and less attention and focus on the thing that was interesting to you. So 20 minutes, let's get into it. I'd love to see your sketches at the end of this 20 minutes. While you are drawing, I will also draw. So the other suggestions from participants so far have been the person on the bike by the Granville Island sign, blah, 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 person on the bike, yes, yes, yes. Person on the girl on the ferry, all right, and the rear view mirror scene. So let me think about, I'm going to draw one of these. Which one should I draw? Okay, so why don't I draw the rear view mirror scene to begin? That's on page 3. So I'm going to draw the rear view mirror scene in this manner, showing this kind of attention to detail and inattention to detail. And you can do the same, whichever one you want to draw, or if you don't have any specific you'd like to draw, why don't you draw the one that I'm drawing and we can talk about what you find interesting about it. And you can maybe follow along just in the way that I'm drawing it. 20 minutes, let's start our timers. Okay, so I am looking at the scene with the rear view mirror. This is the rear view mirror of my car when I stopped to buy groceries on the way home. And what I like about this scene is because this is very close to where I live, and there are mountains in the north, and the car is facing south. But when I'm driving home, I get to see these mountains in the rearview mirror and the beautiful scene of downtown Vancouver. So in order to draw this scene, I think I do have to think about the background as in the trees that I can see and the storefronts. And the foreground is the rearview mirror itself. And of course, that is what is most interesting to me, along with what is inside it. So in this scene, in a sense, I have two sets of backgrounds and foregrounds because there is a whole complicated scene inside the rear view mirror and then one outside it. Let's begin with outside. I want to make sure you can see what I draw. And just to help, okay, let's do this with ink as well. But later on, I'm going to do a drawing with something else just to be able to show you the layering I do. Always for complicated things, I try to draw with one single long line. This helps me to not think about the accuracy of that object, but more about just my natural way of drawing it. And always when I go clockwise with one line, the next line, I try to go anti-clockwise, just to keep things interesting. No other bigger reason. So you can see already my lines are a little wonky, but that's okay. I have to, in order to draw in my way, I have to also embrace these little quirks of my style. So this is my foreground, and then behind it, I have other things which I care little about. So let's just do it quickly. And long lines. Something, a window, a balcony, another window. All right, sure. So now you know that there is a city in front here. There's stuff going on. I use the reverse side of my nib to get some hatching lines just to show where I see the shadows falling, to give a sense of the direction of light. This is what's interesting now, what I see over here. And what I see here is firstly my own car. But remember, I don't really enjoy drawing cars, so I allow myself to not bother too much about details. Just following the line. And once you follow the line and you have some time, you can come back and fill in the details if you so wish. I wouldn't normally do this, but for demonstration purposes, here's a way to go back and fill in the lines. Okay. And then in the middle ground, we have this traffic light. More trees. And the line of the street. So not a lot of details, which means it's quick to draw this part. Also, it isn't a very crowded scene, so it doesn't, occupy too much space. It doesn't overwhelm anybody looking at it. It doesn't overwhelm you, and you can get it done in quick time. So now we're going to the far background. After I draw this last car here, just coming over the horizon, now everything else is in the background. Or so I see it. I could think of these trees in the back also as the middle ground. Why don't we do that? So, but all of this is the area that I'm interested in. So I do give it some attention. I'm not being very too quick with it because this is the main thing that I wanted to draw. Just this world that I could see from my rear view mirror. And far away these mountains, so they get this thin line. And a suggestion of downtown. This is the Vancouver Space Needle, just like one in Seattle. We liked it, so we made one of our own so we wouldn't have to keep going there. All right, so once I've done all of this, I now think about, again, keeping attention to what I care about. What can I do to add some more information here? What can I do to explain this part a little better? Uh, Remember, feel free to ask me anything in the chat window that you need. So I want to bring attention to my subject. So this is where I spend most of my time. And here I see shadows falling, so they get some hatching lines from the reverse side of my nib. And now I can think about if I want to add some more details. This, this. About 8 minutes have elapsed since the start of this drawing. If I was in a very serious rush, I could have technically done it in 5 minutes also. But in 8 minutes or so, 8 minutes or less, you can get a lot of details in. You can get a lot of drawing done. All right. So let's call it ending now. So 9 minutes. And this one was a 10-minute. Area of interest, spiraling out. This is what I want you to do in your sketches also. Whatever drawing you make, I want you to mark your area of interest and I want you to draw the spiral with another ink, just so it is clear what you focused on. And you should be able to tell where you lose the details, where you lose lines, where you have less time spent. Reasons to do this, benefits of keeping this kind of rule when you sketch outdoors are bring focus for yourself and anybody looking at your art. They know where to look because that is where things are happening. They know where not to look because automatically their eyes fall away from areas where there is less to look at. Secondly, save time. If you're drawing somewhere where you don't have a lot of time necessarily, say you want to draw hiking, you want to draw while you're on vacation, you want to draw while you're standing in a queue somewhere, you have to allow yourself to make these decisions, these shortcuts, find what is important, deprioritize what is not, so that you can finish that drawing, so that you can get to the end of it. Another reason to draw this way is that you will learn about yourself. A lot of my drawings, I know that I want to draw this. I don't know why, but from this practice of starting from what looked interesting, let's just start there. What doesn't look interesting, let's not bother with that. Just this basic two rule way of drawing means that I start to understand where my curiosity lies. After I finish the drawing and I look at my drawing again, I understand this is the thing that was making me curious. Drawing is a way to understand yourself. you will reveal yourself to yourself if you allow yourself to engage in this method. I think of a sketchbook, my sketchbooks, as my visual journals. They are places where I express myself honestly, authentically, with vulnerability, and I express myself outside of words. I express myself through these lines and shapes. And if I read into that afterwards, I have a greater understanding of who I am. What is it that I care about? What is it that I don't care so much about? It's really got so little to do with drawing skill. I tell people all the time that you should have a sketchbook habit regardless of whether you can draw well, quote unquote, because being able to draw well is really irrelevant to why you should do this. This is a way to think about what you see. This is a way to be present in the environment you are in, not be distracted by devices or notifications. This is a way to observe deeply. This is a way to really see, to look again, to understand the shapes and sizes of things metaphorically and literally, and therefore have a greater appreciation for the world that we share. And this is a very quick way to access something very deep inside yourself. We often think of words as being the way that we express ourselves, but not all of us are necessarily talented with words. Not only that, words are often not the best way to express complicated thoughts. Sometimes you can say a lot more without using a single word if you allow yourself to observe and you allow yourself to get into this habit of a loop from observation to expression, and it loops back because you're constantly building one with the other. The more you express, the better you get at observing what you see, the better you get at observing, the better you get at this expression. And in the middle of this, the tool that you use is art. This is facilitated with a sketchbook and whatever you choose to draw with. Maybe it's a pen like I do. I only use a pen because I like it. I like how it feels on the paper. And as a former perfectionist, it helps me get over this habit of erasing and redrawing my lines. But you could do this equally well with a pencil. You could do this equally well with color pencils. You could use water brushes. You could use watercolors and gouache. Whatever tool you use is also a way that you see the world. Do you see your world in lines like I do? Do you like to see colors and shapes as a lot of watercolor artists prefer? This is also something to understand about yourself. There is no right tool or wrong tool. There is simply the thing that you enjoy using. Okay, we have 5.5 minutes to go in this section. If you have finished any one of the drawings, please move on to another. 5 minutes is a good time to set yourself for a quick drawing of something else. Remember, you should be able to draw from start to finish in 5 minutes if you allow yourself to focus on what is interesting and you allow yourself to lose interest as things get less interesting. Pat would like to see me draw the one with the boats. I would absolutely love to draw that, Pat. So let's do that now in these remaining 5 minutes that we have. Just 5 minutes to go, and I'm going to draw this so that we can think once more about focus and attention. I really love these four boats all in a line tied to each other. And drawing boats is hard, so I like to think of them not as boats anymore. I just like to think about what is this complicated shape that I see? Where are these lines going? What is happening with them? Instead of bothering about, do I know what these different parts of the boat are? Do I know what they're called? Do I know what their function is? Because that takes away from the thing that is giving me joy, which is just these beautiful lines. Again, just following the lines with this boat. I don't even know what the different boats are called, though I would really love to learn more someday. Coming back for shadows. And of course, the shadows on the water itself. Drawing from pictures is a very unique experience. I also drew this scene on location, and it was very windy that day. So the boats were constantly turning around and around. So you could never see them from one specific angle. They were always changing just slightly. And it was like dancing with the boat in order to see it and to draw it and to not get that perspective completely wrong. But that is the fun of drawing on location. So why don't I finish this drawing and then I'll show you how it was to draw it on location. And you can tell me which one you prefer, which one looks more authentic almost to that moment. Because what I feel about this now, having drawn it on location as well, is that this drawing is feeling so flat to me. This scene is feeling so flat to me because there's just so much here, and all of it has. This is what a photograph does. It flattens three-dimensional reality. And when I was there, my head was bobbing up and down as I looked at it. I was squirming a little in my seat in the cold wind. And that three-dimensionality of this scene was not reduced. It was still a three-dimensional scene that I was interpreting into two-dimensional reality on the page. And this business of doing that yourself, this is where all the difference is. It is the real big deal. If you're the one converting from 3D to 2D and not a picture that you've already got. I drew it very differently then. So you'll see that difference when I finish this and I can show you that drawing. I'm even feeling compelled to draw things that I did not draw at all in that drawing, which is a 10-minute drawing. All right, 20 minutes up. This is how I drew this one as a 5-minute sketch. Beginning with the boats not in the background as you did with the rear view mirror. Is there a reason for this? Yes, great question, Kate. So I was thinking about the thing that caught my interest first, and that's where I begin with. In the second half of this workshop, I'm going to talk about how that pertains to things like background and foreground. So your question is quite timely. But meanwhile, let me show you how this sketch looked when I drew it on location. Here's what I did on location. I took the picture right after I'd finished the drawing. So this is the sketch that I chose to draw while I was sitting there. I really was like, this is how the human eye works. I really was able to focus on the boats. I really thought about their dynamic as four boats tied together. And because my attention was on the boats, I didn't really think about this railing. I didn't really think about this background. All of it felt entirely irrelevant. What caught my attention in that 10-minute period was just the action of these boats with each other, how they looked next to each other. Over the course of this drawing, the angle of the boats changed because of the wind. So they're not actually any single moment that the boats were together, but it is almost like a time lapse of the entire period that I was drawing. The angle has shifted slightly, and I'm trying to account for it, but I'm unsuccessful. My lines are also a function of that moment, feeling cold and being jostled by the wind. So my lines are different from how they are here. Clearly, I allowed myself to focus and zoom in a way that I couldn't when I was looking at this photo. I felt obligated to draw everything. So I hope you can see this difference. It's a very interesting and important difference to me. This is what happens when you are at a location and focusing on something. And this is what happens when you take a picture and then you look at it much later and then you treat that picture as the composition that you have to work with. In this case, I could have sat 5 feet to my left. I could have stood up instead of sitting down, and my perspective would have changed. The angle would have changed. A lot of things could change, and a lot of things were under my discretion. In this case, I had a photo, and the perspective was set, the composition was set, the size of things was set, the focus level was set, and I could only follow it to the best of my ability. Okay, so we're going to take a 5 minute break now. Meanwhile, I would love it if some of you wanted to share what you have been drawing. I'd love to see how this exercise has gone for you. So if you'd like to share, please raise your hand. Use the raise hand feature. It's somewhere, isn't it somewhere? It's in the reactions. So you should be able to raise your hand. Please do so, and I would love to spotlight you. I'm sure it would be so good for others to also see what someone has interpreted a scene as. Um, Please raise your hand so I can focus on you and we can look at the art. All right, so let's begin with Kate. Kate, could you please start your video? There you are. Let me spotlight you. You can also unmute yourself, Kate. I'd love to hear how you chose to draw the way you did.
Well, I'm a real novice, so that was the rear view mirror. I'm glad you picked that because I was interested in that too.
Mhm.
But anyway, that was my first go at it.
All right. So what I really like here is the amount of attention paid to the shape of the rear view mirror. That's, you've got your thick black areas over there. You've got a lot of hatching lines over there. And immediately the background behind it, you can see that there are sparing lines, there are quicker lines and less details. There are no hard, dark areas in this part of the page, which really makes it seem like your focus is what is inside the rear view mirror. And that's a very clear sense of focus, which immediately brings my attention to it as well. So that's a really good job. I love what you've drawn. Did you also draw a second drawing?
That was the first one. Oh, and then I tried the boats, but I didn't get very far. You got way further in 5 minutes.
Okay, I really like this too. Good job. The lines are very interesting. Boats are very difficult to draw, so I empathize with how bringing things together is kind of difficult. Boats are very challenging. I would only ask you as well as anybody else to it takes a lot of practice, but what we really want to do here is that we want to think about how do we focus on. Let me spotlight my drawing. So how do
Yeah.
we see the lines of what we are drawing and don't get lost in what that object is? I think this is where the key is, whether you're drawing things or trees or people even. So if you think you have difficulty drawing heads or legs or arms or hands or boats, the way to draw it is to stop recognizing them as heads and arms and legs and hands as boats. Because once you start to recognize it mentally, your brain will throw images at you of how a hand should look, how a drawing of a boat should look. And that will interfere with what you are seeing in front of you. So, where you want to go is you want to get into the clearest translation from what you see, the lines that you see, and try to not recognize them as the boat that you see, but just the lines that you see and the lines that you draw. So if you can clearly translate from vision to hand to page, you will not have difficulty no matter how complicated that shape is. This takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of pages of bad drawings. So my second piece of advice is please start to love your bad drawings. Please start to enjoy them. Make lots of bad drawings. As long as they are motivated by curiosity and you have that spiral of interest, I promise you will not be bored and you will make many, many, many of them. Okay, we'll go to Annapurna, then we'll go to Linda. So Annapurna, could you please, I'll add you on the spotlight. Could you please share your sketchbook with us?
Hi everyone, and here's mine. I'm not a
Wow.
quick sketcher normally, so this is a big challenge for me, but I tried to focus in on the guy with the bike here. And I mean, I guess what I would have liked to do more if I had more time is do the yellow building some more to
Mhm.
really clarify the difference.
Yeah, so for a limited time sketch, I really love this drawing because again, you have focused on what you care about. It is evident that you have given time here because you bothered not only to draw the form of this person, but also details of their clothing. You can see the texture of clothing. You can see how the shadows are falling on their clothing. So there's a lot of attention paid. Then you can see kind of sort of make sense of where they are because you do have a sense of the large structures around them. You can see they're coming off a street to a pedestrian walkway. You can see that they are under a bridge of sorts, and you can see there are buildings in the background. And the choice of changing color to do the background is really lovely. We are going to go into this in a little more detail now in the second half of this workshop, how to use it as a tool in your toolkit. But I really love it because it does give you a sense of background that this is something else. It is something that is not a primary part of this scene, but is still a necessary part of this scene. Lovely drawing. Do you have another one that you did?
No, I just did this. I mean, I would have
Okay.
spent time on this if I could.
Sure. Okay. We're going to do some quick drawings in the second half. So I'd love to see more of your work. Thank you so much. Linda, could we see your sketchbook? Hi.
Hi. Okay, so this was the first drawing I did. I spent about 14, 15 minutes on it.
All right. Okay, look at that. That is really nice. I like this choice of the thick lines in the middle of it for the trees.
Yeah, I had another marker sitting here, so I grabbed that up because my pen doesn't have a thick line on it. So
Good decision. Good decision. I love how much bigger you've managed to make it.
and then I also did a 5-minute sketch.
Oh, look at that. Oh, very nice. So, I took this photo myself on the sea bus, and this is something I like to do. This is something I spoke about in my previous workshop, is I like to look for what I call natural frames. So things that are in my vision that work as frames. So I love to look through windows. I love to look through canopies of trees because the canopy, the foliage, the window itself, it works as a framing device. So
Right.
I'm going to go into this sketch, this scene again in more detail in the second half of this workshop because it is a great way to think about seeing, to Joan's question, more about not seeing what you're looking at. And it's a great way to think about framing devices and how to find them and how to use them. I love your choice of color to set that background and that there is no color in the foreground. I just love this distinction between them.
Yeah, but I did like that I could see the flowers on her sweatshirt. So
Yeah, I see that you spent time on that. So, if I was drawing this scene, I would not have noticed it. I would not have drawn it. So this
it is
scene,
very dark. Yeah.
the difference in our sketches of this scene already tells us about the difference in where we look and where we focus and where both of us find different interesting things. And I love that. Excellent drawing. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. So, Joan asks a great question. Could you please talk more about not seeing what you're looking at? So, Joan, I think one way to think about is how I draw trees because I get really frustrated drawing trees. And so, because I'm drawing with lines and trees are a lot of lines, and I don't have the patience to do this. I'm a very impatient artist, and if I have to do this every time, I'm just not going to do it, and it won't happen, and therefore I won't draw. So I was looking for ways that I could draw and ways that I could somehow include trees and not get irritated by it. So I came upon this idea. I was reading about existentialism, actually. I was reading about the precursor to existentialist philosophy, which was known as phenomenology. So phenomenology in the 1800s, phenomenologists, it's a tongue twister of a word. They talked about seeing things in a fresh way, seeing things as if you don't know them already. How to see everything as a fresh phenomenon rather than seeing it as something you already know. If you already know it, that is, you already have the images and the words associated for it, then you don't really see it anymore. Then those images crowd your mind, those impressions, those perceptions, those ideas, those preconceptions, those biases, they crowd your mind. So think about it with relation to seeing people. Think about it with relation to seeing people of a different ethnicity. Think about it with respect to seeing a new part of the world. If you have a lot of preconceptions, they will cloud your vision of that space. You will not really be able to appreciate it because your mind is constantly conflicted and bombarded by these preconceptions and old pre-images before you actually had a chance to see them. So phenomenologists talked about it, and I, as an artist, appropriated it for my work by thinking, what if I draw a tree without drawing a tree? So instead of drawing a complicated tree and thinking about branches and leaves, what if I just drew the shape that I could see? And if I could just draw the shape that I saw, preferably in a single quick line that I could then be done with, and if it was a different tree, then again, just following the shapes, not thinking, oh, tree trunk, oh, leaves, oh, foliage, oh, deciduous tree or evergreen tree, not thinking about any of that stuff, just following the lines, then I can think about more clearly the stuff that I want to draw. I can put trees where they belong, but I can also think about the person that I wanted to draw, the reason why I made this drawing. And now suddenly I can draw a person in the park without getting too frustrated that I didn't draw the trees properly, because the trees are just placeholders. And if I follow the lines, then they are in their place. And I can think about my focus, which is these people, which is how somebody is talking to somebody in the park over coffee and how I feel about that interaction. This is a trick that I also used in order to learn how to draw people, because for the longest time, drawing people was very hard for me. So I would get stuck on things like, how do I draw legs? How do I draw bodies? How do I draw heads? And again, I had to teach myself to just follow the line, to not think about, oh, head should be like this, and the jaw should go like that, and ears look exactly like this or that. Not think about it, but just follow the lines in as a function of the amount of time I have and the amount of attention I can give it. I go into how to draw people in a lot more detail in my other workshops. I'll be doing one of those, I think, next month or maybe the month after. So I won't go into that right now because that's really not the scope of this one. But looking at shapes helped me to negotiate these difficult shapes. How do I draw legs? How do I draw their body? How does the body fit on top of legs? I just started following the lines. So if you can draw this, if you can follow the lines, you can draw this complicated shape, even as something like this. And then you can come back and you can furnish some details to make it make sense. Give them pants or not full pants. But being able to follow the outside line, it helped me to see it without getting bothered about what it exactly is and whether it's in perspective, whether I can draw these individual elements. And it helped me to see the outer profile. And that helped me to draw them in a way that I could draw them without feeling intimidated of them. How do you bring the shapes back to the actual thing? Anna, again, so it's super difficult. Your question is a good one, but the key is lots and lots of drawings. So my number one suggestion for everybody here is to make a sketchbook of bad drawings. I want you to call it that. In the front of this sketchbook, I want you to write, this is a sketchbook of bad drawings, and I want you to sign it. What this will do is it will give you permission. It's very difficult to make bad drawings because we are so ashamed of them, because we don't let it happen. So we play within our comfort zone, which for some is a certain kind of drawing, which for others is no drawing at all. So we don't draw enough. But if you give yourself permission to draw bad drawings, you will push out of your comfort zone, you will try new things, and you will stop thinking about the drawing being good. If you let go of the idea that every drawing needs to be good, you can eventually find your way to the good stuff. The path to good drawings is through hundreds and hundreds of bad drawings. And we have to allow ourselves to make those bad drawings. So you draw like this, you draw the shapes and they don't fit together. You draw those shapes again another time and they don't fit together in another whole other way. You solve one problem, you reach another problem and you can't solve that one. The process of doing this constantly iterating, constantly looking. I suggest drawing in on location from direct observation, not photos, because this business of looking at three-dimensional reality and translating it to what you can put on the page with the tool that you choose to draw with, this business has to be a smooth transition in your mind. Before you build the specific talent of drawing perfectly, so to speak, you should get into this habit of seeing, understanding, and breaking it down into two dimensions, breaking it down into the lines that make sense. This is only going to come from practice, only going to come from doing it, failing, doing it. So now in the second half of this workshop, I want to show how you can get into the habit of doing it again and again without driving yourself crazy. We are going to finally talk about layers. So while I say this, while I explain this to you, it would be helpful to look at, say, let's look at page. It's easy to look at page 2. Let's look at page 2. This is the picture of my family. This is my father and my mother and my wife on the left. And we went to Banff National Park. This is where we took the picture. And it was off season, so there are not a lot of people here. But what there is here on this picture is a lot of stuff. You have three people in the foreground and the fence behind them. Then you have a middle ground where there are trees and there are lots of rocks because a little bit of a stream enters into this lake. And then in the background, you have the lake, you have mountains, you have clouds. So I think about the importance of, yeah, you can see my screen too. Okay. So I think about these three layers always: foreground, middle ground, background. For ease, let's call them F, M, and D. And I give them three kinds of roles. One layer is where my subject is. This is the thing that we start our drawing from, the thing that catches our curiosity. Another layer can work as my frame, and another layer can work as my extras, just stuff that kind of helps to be there. It's not necessary, so to speak, but it adds information that is useful. Maybe it tells you where you are, maybe it tells you what else is going on in this space. It gives you some relevant information. Any three of these layers could play any of these roles, but in every drawing you make, you should have a clear sense of where is my subject. Is it in my foreground, my middle ground, or my background? Can I use any of the other layers as a framing layer? And can I use any of the other layers as an extra information layer? So looking at this page 3, is it page 3 again? Oh no, page 2. So my family at Banff National Park, and trying to draw them with this idea of layers. I'm thinking of the background as my framing layer. Actually, no, I'm thinking of the middle ground as my framing layer. I'm thinking of the foreground as where my subjects are. This is a good way to think about it. And then I'm thinking of the background as extra information. So middle ground is my frame, foreground are my subject. I like to let's start with the foreground. I'm going to make a very quick drawing. So not a lot of details, just very, very quickly to explain this concept to you. And please note the single quick lines I'm making, how to see things without recognize them. One good hack is to draw them in this manner. Draw them without drawing necessarily the thing you see. Allow your lines to simply go without thinking that they need to complete one object and then go to the next object. This will sort of subliminally train your mind into not obeying these objects as the things they are, and therefore not necessarily get stuck up on recognizing them as the thing they are. In this case, I want to think of even the fence behind them as part of my middle layer, because I want to think about how this fence is framing them. Complicated fence, so I try to draw as much as I can with a single line. It saves time and it helps me to not see the fence as a fence. Just following lines here. Just following lines here. And fence over. If I try to draw this object by object, it would take me so much more time and I would be so frustrated. Middle ground also includes some of these other elements. They are part of the framing because they help to, literally, they sit around my subjects, and they help to give it definition and a sense of scale. How big are trees? How far in the distance am I able to see? And finally, I have a background that is just supposed to add information. It is my extras layer. So let me mark it. Foreground, subject layer, middle ground, my framing layer, and then a background, which I'm going to draw with the reverse side of my nib just to throw it as far in the background as I can, and which is just there as an extra to tell you, to give you a sense of where I am and what's happening here. So I spend very little time on my extras layer. This is not where I want to spend time. This is not where I want to give attention. I don't have attention for anything except my subjects and the things that are important to demonstrating it. Oh, some clouds. All right, sure. Some clouds. I'm just following these lines. I don't know how it's going to look. Not really relevant. What do I need to do more to emphasize the difference between subjects and the background and the foreground? Maybe just to emphasize how this middle layer is a framing layer, I can give it some dark areas, which will help to set it up as a frame over my subjects. Not too much detail, don't have time for anything except my subjects, but just a bit of information here. And then my subjects get a thick line. Sometimes I like to give them one single thick line across them, because again, it helps me to stop seeing them as individual people, but as one unit. Again, I learn to dissociate from the thing I'm seeing, from the thing I'm recognizing, and see them as one subject. I can come back here now and think, now that I've done everything, what information can I add? Maybe I can give some information about clothing. Maybe the texture, maybe the design and the patterns of the clothes now, just to tell you again that this is what is important, because look, this is where there are things to see. And why not? Couple of eyes, one more eye, and a smile. So very quick, no, not too much detail. I have a foreground, which is my subject layer. I have also emphasized it, how much of the foreground it is by helping it pop in front, by giving it a thick border. It is my subject layer, so it has the most attention, which is why I have given it all kinds of textural details, details of clothing, facial expression. This is where stuff is going on, so this is where you look. And my middle ground is including this object, including the fence, is sort of framing my subject. So it's sitting around them, it's over them and around them, and it is giving you a sense of scale, and they are in an abstract sense inside this frame. And my background is an extra layer, not necessary. I could have made this drawing without the background itself, but it gives you information. It tells you more clearly where I am and what is the sense of this place, what is going on in this place. If I wanted, I could add some hatching lines here just to give it a sense of mountainous territory, but I wouldn't normally, but just for demonstration purposes, why not? But something like this doesn't have to take a lot of time, and it can tell you very quickly a lot of things about what's going on. So I'm going to do one more demo for you very quickly. I'm going to think about what is my subject, what is my frame, what is my extra layer, and I'm going to change it up. So my foreground is not going to be my subject anymore. Let me think about what I want to do. I think a nice one would be this one on the sea bus. So that's the one in Vancouver, looking at the Vancouver Space Needle, not the Seattle Space Needle. And the lady sitting in the foreground, who is not my subject. My subject is the far background. So in this scene, which is page 5 on the C bus, I have a foreground, middle ground, background, but my foreground is my extras layer. It's there just because it needs to be there, but I don't really want to tell you too much about it. So this is as much as I care about it. Let me bring this a little closer to you. Yeah, okay. So this is as much as I care about it. My middle ground is my frame because I love windows and natural viewing points as frames. I love to look through them, and I like to think about how this is a painting in itself. So this is my middle ground. I'm going to give it just a little more detail than my foreground in this case. Just a few more lines, a little bit attention, and just something to emphasize that it matters a little bit more. And the background is where my subject is. Of course, my subject, the skyline of Vancouver, still needs to be with the reverse side of the nib because it is far away, and I want you to know that it is far away. So I'm going to use a thin line to show how it looks, and continuous lines to deal with this kind of structure, like this downtown facade, which is otherwise very tedious to draw. I find buildings super tedious, but this is the mood of it. So I have no hesitation in using a single line to show it. Gets the job done quickly. Something like this, and then let's come back and think about more details. So because this is my subject layer, this is where I want you to look. This is where things should be happening so that you automatically gravitate towards seeing here. Lots of continuous lines. This is the downtown waterfront station. If you ever come to Vancouver by train from Portland or Seattle, this is where your train stops. There are some trees, single shapes, quick shapes, just a sense of tree, some bushes, a park, a bit of a park. Okay, now I would still, just because I like enclosing things, I would do this to my foreground. So my foreground is a shape, a single line that I'm not going into the details of, but I want you to still be able to tell what it is. And a little bit of information. Remember, this is, so let me mark it. My foreground is my extra layer. My middle ground is my framing layer. My background is my subject layer. And just to add information to where we are, and what's going on. So we are on the ferry and somebody is typing. So I do want to tell you what's going on. I do want to set it in context, but I don't want to spend time on the details because I want to save time on this sketch and I want to focus on what is important. So here's my frame. The frame matters. It's in my middle ground, but it's close enough to my foreground in any case, just a few centimeters away. And then the background is where I want you to look. Maybe I do something to show you the flow of water as the ferry makes its way. And if I was to use any colors, then what I might do is, let's see, let me pick a color quickly, just to again emphasize where I want to pay attention. I will use my Posca marker and I will give you some sky. The color of the sky is nothing except information. And the job of the artist is only to filter information, to think about what information should go through and what information is not relevant. I get to make that choice, you get to make that choice, and you should make it very conscientiously. Think about what information you want to send through and don't feel obligated to include every single thing. So clearly what matters is in the background. That's where all the lines are. That's where the details are. That's where the color is. That's where you can see action. The foreground is just the extra layer that sets into context. Where was this picture taken? What happened? What was going on? I was in the sea bus. There were passengers on the sea bus, and one passenger was sitting silhouetted by the window. The window is my framing device through which I could see what was catching my interest, which is the far receding skyline of Vancouver downtown. So, are there any questions about this that I could help you with? When I drew the girl on the ferry, it took a while to figure out where my focus can be. Can you equivocate or do you need to decide from the get-go? So, how fast you see is something that you work on. How fast you see and how fast you understand is something you get better at the more you do. So my advice would be to have a little sketchbook like this. And you remember your sketchbook of bad drawings, make it a sketchbook of 5-minute bad drawings. So task yourself with, say you're on the public transit or you're waiting in line somewhere, waiting for your food or coffee somewhere. Allow yourself to make 5-minute sketches, start to finish, just like this one, and get into the habit of thinking what is interesting. You won't always know. Maybe there are 2 or 3 things. Maybe you are equivocating. Sometimes you figure out only at the end that it looks better this way. And therefore, I think this matters more. You won't have the answers from the start. Sometimes the answer comes to you at the end of a sketch. This is a really beautiful thing when that happens. You should look forward to it. But the more you see, the more you get into the habit of interpretation, the better you get at understanding yourself. What is the source of my curiosity? Why was I drawn to this scene? Why did I feel like drawing it? Now I know. Now that I drew it, I know. And this has happened to me with several drawings. Like I drew this. This is my wife and my mother-in-law. My wife is feeding our son at the moment in the park on Mother's Day. And I sat behind her, behind this tree, and I just thought about this juxtaposition when I started drawing. But then I had this light blue color with me, and I thought it would be fun to maybe do everything else in color. And I love the contrast that it set of not color and lines and not lines. And then I realized what it means, where my focus was, what I found interesting about this scene, how I wanted this background to just sort of blend into itself so that I could bring focus here. Linda asks, isn't focus a choice? Couldn't the drawing be done with the foreground as the focus? Absolutely right. Absolutely, it could. You could redraw this scene exactly with that different focus. In fact, I invite you to. I would now suggest that in the exercise we do, you can choose to draw different drawings with different sense of what is subject, frame, and extras, but maybe even redraw the same drawing and change it up. I could redraw this drawing with the lady in the foreground as the focus. It is absolutely a choice about what you want to do. What draws your eye, what you focus on, is a matter of what draws your eye and what is your curiosity. Also, the only advantage to doing things, one of the big advantages of doing things this way, like having priorities in your layers, is that it will help you to finish sketches quickly. So if you were on the sea bus that day, the sea bus is a 12-minute ride from one shore to the other. You would have to quickly see, you would have to whip out your sketchbook, and then you'd have maybe 7 or 8 minutes to do your drawing. So in that moment, you would make one or the other choice. Neither one of those choices is wrong. It is simply a choice. It is simply one drawing. And what decision you take, maybe the next day you take a different decision. What decision you take is maybe a factor of a lot of other little things. Like maybe it was a cloudy day and the background didn't look so interesting. Maybe it was rainy and what was interesting was the foreground, these people sitting inside while it's raining outside. Maybe you couldn't see clearly. The reason why I was attracted to the background in this case when I took the picture was because sunny days have become kind of rare here, and it was so lovely to be out on a sunny day and to be able to enjoy the skyline. So the person took a back seat in a sense to what I wanted to look at. You could absolutely change the choice of focus, and it is an excellent exercise to do so. Why don't we do that? Let's spend another 20 minutes now. I invite you to do 5-minute drawings. So try to make multiple drawings, and this is your choice. You have to divide your scene into 3 layers. You have to pick which is your subject layer. Think about what caught your curiosity, which layer it belongs to, that becomes your subject layer. Think about which layer works as a sort of frame to your subject. And then give the other remaining third layer the extras position. Either you give it some details, or you silhouette it, or maybe you don't even draw it at all. It's your choice. I don't need extras in this scene. I just needed a frame and a subject. That is also a choice. You could draw 4 different things in 5 minutes. You could also choose to draw the same drawing 4 different times with different focus. One layer as the focus, another layer as the focus. Change it up, see what that does. Does it become more joyful? Does it become more or less interesting? More or less tedious? Again, this depends on what you find tedious. And let's give it a shot. Let's get into it. So in the chat, feel free to tell me which drawing you're thinking about. If it helps for me to draw it with you, and I will get to drawing that one, and we can think about what is a good focus, what is a good subject. And just to aid this process further, what I'm going to do is this next drawing I'm going to draw with my color pencils, and I'm going to set these 3 layers as 3 different colors just to be able to emphasize that difference in how they work. So if there are suggestions, please put them in the comment box. Otherwise, I'm going to pick a scene that I want to draw by myself. Only the last couple of pages are actually left for me to draw. So I'm going to redraw one of the other scenes as well. One with lots of people drawing outside by Diana. Excellent. That's the one I was feeling like doing too. This is when I did a demo in the town of Delft in the Netherlands. For those of you who might not know, that's me sitting in the middle, by the way. But for those of you who might not know, I lived in Delft for about 5 years. I did a master's degree at the university in Delft. to become a Master of Science in Biomechanical Engineering. This is my old life before I was an artist, before I was a writer. I was an engineer, and I went there a few years later as an artist, and I looked at these same places that I used to roam around as a grad student, as a master's student, and I looked at it through my sketchbook, and it was a lot of fun. So this is the demo I did in the town center of Delft. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. It's also where Vermeer is from. So the girl with the pearl earring. In fact, you can see behind in the blue with the blue awning. That is the house of Vermeer, and it is the museum of Vermeer. And inside there is a lot of beautiful art by him. So I'm going to draw this one. All the people watching me demo, this bench and these people are my foreground. I would like to think of the statue in the back as my middle ground, and these various trucks lining up because they were going to have a market. And then I'll think of the traditional, typical Dutch housing in the back as my background and give them 3 layers and 3 different kinds of colors. So I love how the black of the lorry, the truck, I think, or maybe it's a construction equipment. I love how it is working as a frame. So I do want to see it as a frame, but it might be more interesting to do something else. So why don't we think of the foreground as the bench and the people sitting at the bench? And the people behind me are all part of the middle ground also. So let's do it that way. I'm going to draw over here, and with red for my subject layer, which is where I am. Let's begin. Long lines to deal with complex shapes. Still a single line, if you notice. Still the single line, and still the single line going up. So when I'm drawing super dynamic scenes where things can change, I like to use single lines because they help me capture a lot of poses and activity, things that will change quickly in very little time. And I find that beneficial because I can always come back on location, especially to fill in details. So if this lady changed her posture, I can always come back and later fill in how her hair looks because that is sort of independent of posture. But the posture is what is key, what would change very quickly. So it was important to capture it immediately before it could change. So long lines help me to do that. All right, foreground. Maybe I can give myself some hair again. This would be my foreground. Let's go to middle ground, all of these people around me. So they are acting as a frame because they bring attention to what is going on with the subject. These people are looking at me, they are looking at the desk. And so they naturally draw your eye also towards where they're looking. So a lot of great Renaissance painting was also this way. Your eyes would be drawn towards where the subjects, the people in the painting were looking. And it was a very conscious and intentional choice by the painters to have them look one direction or the other. So this is the quickest way for you to also control the attention of your audience by having your subjects look towards, by having people in your scene look towards whatever your subject might be. This doesn't have to be too detailed because remember, this is not my subject. This is the layer that is my frame. So I'm not going to get lost in how to make every person look exactly like themselves. That's not the point. The point is just to tell you that there are people looking in this direction. And the least I can do to make that point across is what I do. So this is where engineering comes in. The least work I can do to make my point. And sure, some things are misaligned now. This bottle has ended up, it should be over here. That's okay. We can't change reality that much when we are sketching. One more person would be nice. I think everybody else would be less important. Long lines, allowing my lines to get wonky. And now we have backgrounds. So things that just add information about where we are and what's happening that are not the core part of this scene. So although Delft has beautiful architecture, that is not why I'm making this drawing. Does not mean this architecture is not relevant to me. It is simply not the point of this particular drawing. I could make this same drawing again and instead choose to focus on the architecture. But now it is just my extras layer, so it gets very little attention. I jump from object to object. I don't even finish it properly because this is not really important. I just want you to know that there are buildings here, there are roofs here, and one statue. Maybe I come back to give you the proper impression of building by adding a few windows, but not too many because I'm straying away from my area of interest. And the further I stray, the less I care, the less I allow myself to care. So I save time, I'm able to focus, I don't lose a sense of what I wanted to draw. Maybe I come back to add some details here. Think about where the light is falling and also be able to give a sense of texture. All right, so foreground subject, middle ground frame, and background extra. Diana asks, how do you do it quickly? So Diana, the key is again long line. I cannot emphasize this enough. The more you trust yourself to make long lines, remember the line from here all the way, this person, this bench, this person was one line. And the more you trust yourself to do long lines, a lot of good things happen. So long lines are essential because firstly, they are your lines. Your long line is going to be with your speed, the way your hand moves, the way your hand rests on the page. Maybe your hand shivers a little. Maybe you can find in it also evidence of your heartbeat, your pulse rate. depending on where you're drawing, depending on the energy of the space. So a long line also taps into the moment. Finally, a long line will help you dissociate. A long line tells you that's not an arm I'm drawing. A long line tells you that's not someone's head. I'm just following this shape. A long line helps to blur the distinction between someone's head, their scarf, their torso, their bag, their lower body, and the bench they're sitting on. And it forces your mind into seeing just these lines that you're following, one line to the other line to the other line to the other line, regardless of how they join, regardless of what body object they represent. Long lines help you to start not recognizing, but just seeing. So, of course, long lines also mean that you will draw quickly because you will go very quickly from one thing to the other. You will jump from one object to another. It does not, you no more require to think about what is the perspective I need to follow. Your job is just to follow the line. How are things going to fit together? How do I get the scale of things to fit together? If you draw with long lines, and then you come back to add details, then things automatically fit together. You come back to add details, you come back to add more details on your foreground, more details for hair. Long lines are distinctly your lines. It is almost like your handwriting. Nobody else can copy them. Nobody else would draw them exactly like you. So this is also your shortcut to your style. They are representative of the moment. If you draw somewhere that it's cold, your hands will shiver. Your long lines will represent that little shivering in your stroke work. They will help you dissociate because you will jump from one object to another in trying to maintain the single line. And so you will stop seeing those objects as what you recognize them as, and you will simply see the lines. And they will help you go quickly over dynamic scenes where stuff is moving. Like this person's posture could change, this person could get up. Um, Someone could push me a little bit to the right, and my perspective of this desk could change completely. But having done the long line, I can draw the dynamic part of my scene very quickly, and then I can come back to fill in these details, which I could fill even if this person's posture changed. So how their hair looks, or whether they've got a bag slung over their left shoulder or their right shoulder, how they are, maybe the nature of their dress, textures, all other kinds of details can be filled in when you come back to what you have captured with your long lines. They will help you capture something, capture ephemeral things, things that are changing, things that are fleeting, things that are there just in that moment that really matter to you. A long line will help you capture it. It is not easy. It is difficult, but this is the practice that you put yourself through. Long lines will bring you a lot of joy. So difficult things, as long as they are fun to do, are possible to do. If you find that they are tedious, you need to try something else. But in my experience, as long as you're having fun, it is very easy to have fun with art. And as long as you're having fun, it makes it very easy to go on this learning curve. Even if it is difficult, every day should be a fun adventure that you look forward to. Another reason I give long lines is a quote that I share in every workshop of mine. If you ever attended a workshop of mine, you've already heard this. This is from my favorite musician, Miles Davis. And long lines carry your mistakes, your idiosyncrasies, your little quirks. Those mistakes and idiosyncrasies and quirks give you ideas. Like I had this bright idea one day to not draw feet. And I thought, what happens if I don't draw feet? Who will stop me if I don't draw feet? Will my drawing really be ruined? And the longer you stay with these so-called mistakes, the longer you dwell on these ideas, page after page after page, that is how you get to the thing that we are all looking for. Once is a mistake, twice is an idea, 3 times is styled. Style is an accumulation of mistakes that you did not try to wipe out. Mistakes that you think of as mistakes are often signatures of your personality, your preferences, your idiosyncrasies. These are things that you should not erase from the page. They should be on the page, who you are. The more time you spend with these mistakes without erasing them, the better ideas you get. How can I negotiate this thing that is difficult for me to do because I don't like to draw feet, because I don't like to draw architecture, because I don't like to draw too much facial details, because I don't like to draw things that are line after line, parallel lines that are boring to me. The more you stay with these ideas, you try it one way, you try it another way, you try it a third way. One of them looks good, you try it again, and you try it again, and you try it again, and you come up with more ideas. Once is a mistake, twice is an idea. The more you stay with this, the more you draw in a manner that is authentic to you. It is something that you could not do otherwise. You could not do something else because this is who you are. This is your personality and your preferences. The longer you stay with these ideas and you work with them in your sketchbook of bad drawings, 3 times is style. That is how you develop something that becomes known as your style. I can look at your art, Nishant, and I know instantly that it is yours. Whether I draw with a color pencil, whether I draw with an ink pen, whether I use Posca markers, my art is always my art because it is always my lines with my feelings of the moment, with my style. All of it naturally speaking to who I am, what I don't like to do, what I do like to do, what I enjoy, the little tricks I like to pull, all of them speak to me. So the idea of your art practice, whether it is as a casual observer of your environment, whether it is as somebody who wants to get better at drawing, the idea should be that it should speak to you. It should be representative of who you are. And in that way, it will always be fun. It will always engage with your curiosity. And it will always keep you moving forward in learning and learning and learning. This is a long way to go. It took me many years, like 7, 8 years of daily drawing to get to my style, but all of it was joyful. None of it felt like a slog because all of it was sparked from what is interesting to me. What do I like to look at? What do I like to represent? What are the tools I like to play with? If you can find your choice of tools, if you can chase your curiosity, and if you can set aside just that little sliver of time that lets you express it, this journey will be a lot of fun for you, and none of it will be, well, it will be hard, but it is also, you know what I like to think of the difference between easy and simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple. You know exactly what you have to do. It's not going to be easy, but you know exactly what you have to do. And that makes a lot of difference if you can find a fun way to keep doing what you want to do. All right, so almost at the end of this workshop, guys, let me review everything that we spoke about. And if you're still drawing, please feel free to continue. You will also get the recording of this session, so you will be able to see all of it. But just a quick overview, and then we will look at some of your sketches. And I'd love to hear how you felt about incorporating these lessons and where you think you might be able to apply them. So we began with thinking about objects, points of interest, subjects that are important to us, that catch our eye. Sometimes you don't know why, you just have a sense. I urge you to stay with that sense and not throw it away. It's very easy to think, oh, what do I know? I don't have any ideas. My ideas are stale, so I'll just ignore my own ideas and I will do what other people do. I will do how other artists draw or paint, people I admire. I urge you to ignore other people, including me if I'm in your head. Just listen to yourself. Where is your curiosity? I want you to pinpoint it, even if it is wrong, even if it is arbitrary, even if it isn't a deep thought. Just have a focus for the sake of having a focus. Remember, it's just a 5 minute, 10 minute drawing. Spiral out. Spiral out, and then you make it a 5 minute, 10 minute drawing because you allow yourself to not care about things you don't care about. People keep talking about, having a sense of what you like. I really suggest you also have a sense of what you dislike. It is so important. It is the key to taste. You can't have taste if you love everything. You have to have a sense of what you don't frankly care a lot about. And I have a sense of that, and that comes through in my art. What is it that I don't think was important at all? Spiral out and allow that to be represented in your sketches. We did 10-minute sketches. We did 5-minute sketches also. The object of this workshop is not that you should somehow be a speed drawing artist. It is not a virtue in itself that you know how to finish a sketch in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. The reason why I recommend a practice of speed sketching, whether it's in a little sketchbook like this or otherwise, why I think 10 minutes is a good way, 15 minutes, this was a 20, 30-minute drawing. Why those kind of limitations help is that they will teach you how to get into the business of seeing quickly. You draw quickly so that you get into the habit of knowing how to narrow down on this is what's interesting to me. This is what is background. This is what is foreground. You should learn how to be able to separate things into layers very quickly. Even if you choose to take a picture and then paint it on a canvas and take 5, 6 hours, 5, 6 weeks over it, your eye and your instinct should be quick. Your hesitations should be negligible. The way to do that is to train your mind to see quickly. The way to do that is to set yourself these timed subjects, 5-minute drawings, 10-minute drawings, 2-minute drawings, 1-minute drawings. What happens if you draw something in 10 minutes and then you draw it again in 5 minutes? What changes? If you had half the time, where did you focus? Where did you not pay attention anymore? Does this tell you something about your sense of priorities? Does this tell you about your sense of essential composition? If you give yourself speed drawing tasks, you allow a space where hesitations can't exist, second thoughts have no room, and you allow yourself to tap into your instincts, and therefore you learn more about your own instincts. So think about speed drawing not necessarily as an end in itself, but as a means to better understanding the kind of things that attract you. Second half of this workshop, we did layers. So it is very useful to think about your scene in terms of 3 layers. You could do more, sure, why not? I think of 3 layers because it works for me this way. This is the framing that I have sort of invented for my mind, which is that I want to think of a foreground, middle ground, and background. I want to think about where my subject is, which layer, therefore, that subject occupies. I want to think about another layer as a frame for that subject because this is how I am. I look for what I call natural frames. So windows that I can peek through, trees that sort of sit over my subject and help me to see inside, people who are pointing towards my subject from their eye line and therefore bring attention to my subject and work as a frame in that sense. And then a third layer, which sometimes doesn't exist even, but a third layer, which is just adding information, giving extra information like garnishing, doesn't necessarily have to be there. This drawing is not incomplete without the background, but now you know that this is somewhere in Europe because of the architecture. And if I've painted House of Vermeer here, you would know maybe this is somewhere in the Netherlands. And you now have more sense of where this drawing sits. So 3 layers help me see, help me understand, help me prioritize. Less attention to the other layers, most attention to the subject layer. This is only a frame, so what these people look like does not matter. This is only a frame, so the shadows on it are less relevant. This is only a frame, so what kind of tree it is really, really not important. So 3 layers also help you prioritize. Prioritization saves you time. Prioritization brings focus to what you wanted to share. And prioritization helps you, just as it helps me, to think about what I care about and not spend time thinking about stuff that I don't care about. Stay with your mistake. That is, I think, my biggest lesson to you. Don't discount your vision. Don't think that your ideas are silly. Stay with them, work with them, keep that sketchbook of bad drawings. I dare you to finish that sketchbook with only bad drawings. I think by the end, you will find that they are not so bad anymore. And the biggest thing you needed was permission to allow yourself to do this thing. Okay, so that's a lot of talk from me. I want to see some sketches now. I'd love for you to raise your hands again, please. If you have any, even one sketch to share today that you feel nice about, that you feel helped you have a little breakthrough, please use the raise hand feature, and I'd love to spotlight you, and maybe you could tell us about it. All right, let's begin with Linda.
No, I did one sketch
All right.
and I did the guy on the little motorbike.
All right.
And
So
the bike to me was the
tell me
subject.
about the layers here.
Yeah, so the man on the bike was the main subject with the bike especially.
Mhm.
But I loved the signage behind it, so that was kind of the middle layer that kind of
Yeah.
helped frame it all, and then the trees and the people in the background. But even to me, the pole was
Absolutely.
kind of background, even though it was up front.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's so there is a sense that this specific, and he's also right in the middle of your page. So there is a very good sense of focus on him, and the hatching lines also help to bring more focus to him. You've used the underside of the bridge very cleverly as a frame. It's working perfectly because he's right inside that, and then the bike crossing sign as well. Both of them work as really excellent frames that bring attention to him. And there is a very
And I just
clear
cut the
distinction.
post, this big giant cement pillar. I
Yeah.
left it blank. So
Yeah, perfect. And there is a very clear sense of where attention has been given and where it has not been given. So there are other people in this scene, but we can see that they have very little attention given to them, so they matter very little as compared to the person in the foreground, the car behind them. Great job. This is a really good one. Did you do just the one? Did you do another?
no, this is the only one I did.
All right. Thank you for sharing. This was really lovely.
Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Annapurna. And then we'll go to Akshay as well.
So I did the one you did last time with the rear view
Mhm.
mirror, and when I started, actually, I wanted, the foreground to be the mirror itself.
Right.
But once I was halfway in, I really liked how the trees in the back and the trees in the mirror kind of go together. So that's how I switched it around.
Yeah. Actually, this is really interesting because the green color sort of works for both the real background and the background of the mirror.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it also really helps to separate these layers, just within your rear view mirror. It's because you used color for one layer, it is helping to not overcrowd this little scene because it's just a little rear view mirror. It's so easy to crowd it up with too many lines and too busy and you can't tell what's what. But choosing color for just one layer has really sort of relieved the stress of the lines and made it really easy and calming to see. Excellent choice. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Akshay. Akshay, if you would please start your video.
I'm not sure if you can see. Yeah.
I can see, yes. You need to bring it to your left though. Yeah.
Hold on one second. Let me use.
Yeah. All right. Oh, look at that. Tell us about it.
So I was very interested in the rear view mirror. So I've tried to put in extra details in there. In fact, I noticed that it doesn't say objects in the mirror appear closer than they are, but I added the detail as well. So
Yeah.
I think the focus was on the view in the rear view mirror. That's what stood out to me really.
Yeah. Clearly,
And
you enjoy drawing cars more than I do.
yeah,
You paid a lot of loving attention to
yeah.
the cars, both the cars, all three cars, and I love how they are sort of receding into the background. Good job with that. There's a very clear focus on the foreground of the rear view mirror, so the car behind me and my car. And I love the attention paid versus the lines as they go further back. There's also a sense of perspective because you drew the dividing line on the road. So there's a sense of how the perspective is flowing. And the actual background behind the rear view mirror is also very nicely done. Very sparing lines, and you have a sense of location. Great job. This is a really good one.
Thank you. And then I drew this one. So here I kind
All
of
right.
made people a little bit of the background. The more
Yeah.
I tried to focus on the river and the trees, but then I got
Aha.
a little bit with the shading. So
Oh no, this is so good. So tell me, why don't we officially mark what layer is playing what role?
the river and the trees, that is basically my foreground.
Right.
The hills and the clouds, that's the background. And in a sense, the people in the front are also background because uh, I think they are not the focus of the
Yeah.
drawing.
So I would change the phrasing a little bit because
Mhm.
foreground, middle ground, background can't change by itself. So the
Right.
people in the foreground are sort of your frame, or they are
Yeah.
your extra layer. They are not
Yeah.
really important, but their silhouette is setting the scene.
Right.
And your middle ground is your subject. That's where the
Okay.
lake is, that's where the trees are, and you've
Mhm.
paid a lot of attention. We can almost think of also as the mountains being in the middle ground and just the sky as the background, which
Yeah.
is sitting over everything, and that big cloud is working as a frame for this subject area with the mountains and the lake below it. And you've pulled a lot of attention to the water with the choice of color, and to the mountains and the trees with the hatching lines and the spectrum from light to dark. Really good. I love this decision. Great job.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. All right. So, is anybody else eager to share a sketch? If not, sometimes people don't like to share in public. You can also, like, you'll get a feedback email from me about this workshop, and you can hit reply to that, and you can share your sketches and any questions you have, any thoughts you have. I'd love to give you some time and answer those, give you some feedback on your drawings. In that email, I will also send you pictures of these drawings that I did today. So all the drawings I did, and also the video of this workshop for you to see. It will be a private video, so please don't share it with other people. So just for the privacy of everybody who's here, but you will always be able to access it, and I hope it's useful to you. This is the first time I did a workshop just on layers, so I hope you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun drawing with you guys. It was a lot of fun seeing your art. So many of you have drawn so well. I'm very pleased to see. I hope that thinking in layers will help you to, will help you to parse this complex world that we live in, and will help you to think about where your interests lie. And I would really love if it helped you to sketch more often, if it helped you to not be intimidated by complicated scenes and busy scenes. And maybe you can give yourself permission to ignore those things that don't matter to you very much. Kate asks about the next workshop. Kate, I'll be doing another workshop. Hopefully soon. Please be signed up to my newsletter. I hope you're all on my newsletter because that's where my announcements go first of all. In case any of you are not, let me include the link. Feel free to sign up. All readers get a discount on every workshop seat, as a lot of you availed. If you are a paid subscriber to my newsletter, then all my workshops all year, every single workshop is completely free to you. So it's a great deal if you think this was a good lesson for you. If the video is going to prove to be useful to you, then becoming a Sneaky Art insider is, I think, kind of a good deal. I love drawing with you today. Thank you so much for drawing with me. Please go out and start drawing. Please get a little sketchbook of bad drawings and make many, many bad drawings. And think of me when you make a bad drawing. That would be nice. Thank you for joining.